What were the circumstances that led to you and your mother being officially estranged?
I don't want her in my life anymore. It hurts all the time. And I've just been diving deep into this breath work and exploring my emotional self and developing emotions that I stopped having at about age 12. I stopped feeling at age 12.
What was happening in your childhood that I guess became so normalized you didn't realize it was abnormal until you were in your 30s?
Um, I always thought it was because we're an English family and English people don't express their emotions very well, which is true. It's an English thing. We're very stoic, small s stoic about our emotions, stiff upper lip and all that, but not to the degree that my family was. It was ridiculous. I have a memory of my mother making fun of my father because he cried at his father's funeral. So I thought, showing emotion, if you're a man and you show emotions of any sort, that's a weakness. You mustn't do that. So I understood that my father was weak because he cried at his father's funeral. And both my parents are damaged people. My mother was raised by alcoholics. My grandfather was a POW. He came back from World War II in the UK in 1945 and got drunk and stayed drunk until he died, 55 years later, whatever it was. He lived to be 78, which is a good long time because you were drunk all that time. So my mother was raised with an abusive alcoholic. So there's all sorts of baggage that comes with that. That's a traumatic experience.
What were some things that would happen on a regular basis now that you look back?
So actually, we'll go deeper into this, but I used to get accidentally hurt all the time. So I just assumed I was clumsy. It was always my fault. I was always in the way. I was always in the way of the door being slammed. I was always in the way of the car door being shut. I shouldn't have been at the top of the stairs and I got knocked down them. I shouldn't have been walking behind my mother when she had to turn around really quickly and elbow me in the head. It was my fault for being there. So it was those accidental things. It wasn't, here's your punishment, you're getting a beating. It was just this random lashing out of violence. When I understand why it happened. It wasn't because she hated me. It was because she hated herself and she had no control. And so she felt this pain and had to give pain to someone else. That was her way of coping with it. Um, and my mother's relationship with my father was what I know was pretty awful. My father was not an emotionally supportive person at all, and there was an act of violence between them before I was born. There was a pretty brutal period of time in their lives as a couple, and they shouldn't have been together at all. I'm not entirely sure the circumstances of my conception, even like if after my parents got divorced, which was when I was an adult, they got divorced almost 20 years ago, I guess. So no, it was my father was always adamant that I was made with love. Kept saying that, and now looking back, but was I? Like I clearly wasn't wanted. And then his own story, he was a mistake. His siblings are 20 years older than he is. His parents were in their mid 40s when he was born, and his father didn't. He was finished being a father at that time. Didn't want another child, and so my father didn't grow up with any kind of parental support or parental love either. So these two deeply damaged people somehow found each other and successfully passed on their trauma to their two kids, who had to sort it out on their own. So yeah, there's those little moments of violence like that when I was a small child, and then when I was older, when I was a teenager, it was my mother had a deep hatred, has I suppose a deep hatred for men. Men have hurt her in her life over and over again. Her father, her husband, I don't know who else, but she's been hurt by men over and over again. So she hates men, and would tell me almost every day that I'm a man and she hates men. So I'm being told every day that my mom hates me. So that was me as a teenager. So I understood that emotions are bad. I'll just shut it off and ignore that and just exist. So
Did that cause any kind of behavioral issues when you were in school or when you were a teenager?
Yes, for sure. I realize now when I was a teenager, I was a popular kid. I had lots of friends. I played on all sports teams. I was a good student. I got, if I wanted to, I got A's. Um, but I had a lot of anxiety around my social group. Looking back, I had social anxiety disorder. It was hard for me to be in social groups. It was very hard for me to open up to others. I had very few close friends. In fact, it's only been, you're one of them. I have very few close friends. And it's only been in the past couple of years that I've been able to make those close friends. I have one high school friend I was still very close with. But after high school, it was just, I haven't spoken to anyone ever again. Just wasn't wasn't interested. Yeah, when I was in high school, the only way I could deal with these social interactions was to get very, very drunk. I was a teenage binge alcoholic. Every Friday, every Saturday night, I drank to blacking out. Every Friday, every Saturday night, I would binge drink until I was blind drunk. All through high school, from probably grade 10 to grade 13. We got grade 13 back then. It's constant. That's how I dealt with my social situation in high school.
What were the circumstances that led to you and your mother being officially estranged?
The next phase of the abuse. So as a small child, it was accidental physical abuse. As a teenager, it was just insults and hatred. And then when I left home, as soon as like grade 13 was over, I was out. I did not come back home after I left. And then, but I would still think I was supposed to be close with my family. So we would talk and, there'd be phone calls. We didn't have email. Yeah, my parents didn't have email. So we'd write letters sometimes, but phone calls usually. And I'd try and be a good son, try and, talk to my mom and I was pretty estranged from my father all through high school. And then, I'd have a conversation with my mom. And then, the next day, my sister would call me and say, Mom's really worried about you. Why haven't you spoken to her in months? I just did. I spoke to her yesterday. So I talked to her almost every week. But my mom would like make up lies about me not paying attention to her, me not giving her attention. And she'd say this to my sister, and my sister would phone me and say, why aren't you, being a good son? Well, I thought I was being a good son. So it was these strange lies kept happening about me not being supportive of my mother. And this would happen and then after university and all through adulthood. It would, this kept happening where I'd hear that I've done something horrible to my mom, and I didn't do it. That did not happen. She would just tell lies about me being a bad person. And after my parents got divorced, I was very supportive. I helped her out. She got remarried, and then she disappeared in the middle of the night. Her and her new husband left Canada, and he was American. She's divorced again. And they just moved away in the middle of the night. They didn't tell my sister or me that they moved. They just disappeared and went to Florida, lived there. We didn't know where they were. We didn't hear from them for months. And then finally, my mom reached out to my sister, and my sister just lost her shit with her and like told her off. Said, how could you just leave us like this? Why are you doing this? And I told my sister that, it's this kind of stuff that has happened to me over and over and over again. And it was at that moment I just said, I'm done. I don't want her in my life anymore. It hurts all the time. And that was it.
I mean, you understand her story and what caused this kind of behavior. Does it coincide with any particular like personality disorder or some kind of mental health issue?
I imagine there is a personality profile associated with her. I don't know what it is. She's just damaged from her upbringing. She her father was not a nice man. I don't know if there's any physical or sexual abuse towards her, but if you're raised with an alcoholic, you're going to have to find some ways to cope with that. The only thing I could think of about my mother is that she's a very nasty person. She is mean to people. She speaks very poorly about everyone. She doesn't have a nice thing to say about anyone ever, including me. So yeah, that was just the way she is. And I just realized I don't need a mom. Like by the time I cut off relations with her, I was, fully grown, fully on my own in my 30s by then. I didn't need her. I don't need somebody like that in my life. If I met somebody at a social event and they were like, if they were a horrible, nasty person, I just wouldn't be their friend. I wouldn't like try to be their friend over and over again. And that was kind of where I was coming from when I said, I'm not going to have her in my life anymore.
Mm.
This is just not worth it. I'd get nothing from this, and I've got more important things to do.
Has anybody ever challenged you on that and saying things like, oh, that's your mom, or something cliche like that, that doesn't
Oh
really
yeah,
understand?
yeah, a lot of people. But they didn't know the full story. I didn't share this full story. I didn't share the fact that I'd been abused until after my son was born, and I just blurted it out to a friend of mine at work, a colleague who was also sharing something personal. But yeah, lots of people have said, how can you not speak with your mother? How can you not do that? Even my sister says that. What? Like, how can you still not talk to her? She's your mom. You have to talk to her. Well, no, I don't have to.
Do you think it's just a completion within you, or do you think it's resentment you hold towards her?
That's actually a really good question. I've grappled with that for a while, and it's only been in the past couple of years where I understand that it's a completion for me. I am complete. I thought for a long time that it's just resentment, it's anger. I want to punish her by not talking to her. This is my way to get back at her. Those thoughts have come through my mind. I've grappled with it, but in the past, since I've been on this deep journey of breath work and really understanding myself, I can look at that and understand that no, I made a decision about the relationships that I want in my life, and that's a relationship that I don't want. So I feel like I am complete, and that's in some of the plant work that I've been doing in the past 12 months or so, or a year, I guess. That's really solidified.
Wow.